I'd like to start this retrospective by stating that the fact that Disintegration was the first album by The Cure that I ever purchased has no bearings on my feelings toward this particular album. The year was 1998 and I was 13 years of age. I had just begun my music collection the previous year, but my love of The Cure actually began several years earlier. The year back then was either 1992 or 1993, and I remember it well because I had just seen the newly released Tim Burton film Batman Returns on VHS. The film became an instant favorite of mine, and to this day it remains my favorite Batman film. I had also seen Tim Burton's earlier films, Beetlejuice and Edward Scissorhands, at around about the same time I first saw Batman Returns, and like a lot of kids, Tim Burton had quickly become my favorite filmmaker. He is no longer, but I still love a lot of his work beyond words. How does any of this relate to my discovery of The Cure? Well, around about the same time I became a Tim Burton fan, I stumbled across the music video for The Cure's song, Lullaby. The moment I first saw Lullaby, I was transported right back to that Tim Burton universe where the stuff of my darkest dreams were visualized by a kindred spirit. Only on this occasion, the kindred spirit in question was not in fact Tim Burton. The video for Lullaby was actually directed by The Cure's longtime visualist, Tim Pope. Lullaby was entirely his own vision, and my Tim Burton comparison only stems from my discovery of Burton and The Cure at exactly the same moment in time. At the impressionable age of 8, I was always going to connect the two on account of their stylistic similarities. Tim Pope's ghoulish imagery along with The Cure's incredibly hypnotic melody made me an instant fan at 8 years of age. Fast forward 5 years and The Cure forever became my favorite band on the planet Earth, although those of you that know me know that Depeche Mode is tied with The Cure in my rankings. I will never forget the first time I put Disintegration on when I was 13. I obviously went for this particular album as my first by The Cure because it featured my beloved Lullaby. I was not quite prepared for the musical magnificence which captured my imagination, took my breath away, and moved me to tears. I could literally list every single song on the album as a highlight. The sequence in which they play could not be more perfect, but even if the album were rearranged, each song would sound no less brilliant. The opening 3 songs are an almost seamless transition of one grand performance. 3 pieces which maintain the same mood, and 3 classic songs on an album full of them. The ethereal power of the opening number, Plain Song, is continued on the more meditative melancholia of Pictures of You and the cathartic sweep of Close Down. It was on the latter that I realized I was probably listening to the greatest album ever made. It was a feeling in my heart, a feeling which brought tears to my eyes and a smile to my face at exactly the same time. A moment which has never been replicated since on any album besides Disintegration. There is only one other time such a moment occurred due to music, and it was in fact upon first hearing The Cure's signature song, Just Like Heaven, and yes, that is my favorite song in the history of music. Aside from its outstanding opening trio, Disintegration is also home to a 2-part epic, beginning with the gloomy intensity of Prayers for Rain and its subdued but no less gloom-drenched companion, The Same Deep Water as You. These heavily atmospheric pieces, complete with rumbling thunder and lashing rain effects, truly immerse the listeners underneath the bursting clouds, saturating us for well over 15 minutes as the slow-burning symphonic melancholy of The Same Deep Water as You picks up where the intensely brooding Prayers for Rain leaves off. I also feel that while each song sounds perfectly placed from a musical standpoint, the lyrics suggest that they are presented in a non-linear fashion. Disintegration is like a jigsaw of the human heart, one which has been disintegrated due to severe heartbreak coupled with a bite of age. Thus we are presented with the story of that heart out of sequence, and this epiphany came to me after several listens to The Same Deep Water as You. It is to me an obvious prequel to Pictures of You, which I will elaborate on later in this retrospective. The compact disc version of Disintegration features 2 exclusive songs, Homesick and Last Dance, and although they are presented several tracks apart, they certainly sound musically connected, despite their vibes being significantly different. But even without these songs, the album is already an instant classic. Their inclusion just brings a perfect album a little beyond perfection. A taste of such perfection could be heard on each of the singles lifted from the album. The groovy Fascination Street was the lead single in the USA, while Europe got Lullaby. I personally adore both songs, but Fascination Street is my favorite single release from the album. It is interesting to note that Robert Smith had pondered omitting Fascination Street from the album before its release, not because he did not like it, but rather because he felt like it did not fit among the other songs on the album. Funnily enough, many fans of The Cure have said exactly the same thing about Lullaby, a song which Robert Smith intended for the album from the moment he wrote it. Musically, Fascination Street definitely sounds more at home on Disintegration than Lullaby does, but whether you are of Robert's or the common fan's opinion, there is no denying that neither song should have been on any album besides Disintegration. The aforementioned Pictures of You also enjoyed a single release, but the one most will remember from Disintegration is undoubtedly Love Song. Arguably the most popular song on the album, while not exactly the most complex or captivating, Love Song did provide The Cure with one of their biggest chart hits ever when it hit number 2 on the American Billboard Top 100. Lyrically, the song is extremely simple, but musically it is as sublime as one would expect from The Cure. Love Song may not be able to compete with most of anything else on the album from a musical standpoint, but it is still an impressive composition. Here is my track-by-track analysis of Disintegration. Track 1 is Plain Song. This truly magical opening number is the perfect introduction to what many consider to be The Cure's greatest album. From the opening ambience, complete with haunting wind chimes, Plain Song sounds distinctly dreamlike. Shimmering into existence, the blaring synths and jangly guitars shoot across the towering soundscape like a rainbow. The wistful vocals of Robert Smith seep in and out of the hazy music, which sets the tone for the songs which follow. The songs seem to be about death, or more specifically, watching someone you love die. Not necessarily death in the physical form, though that is certainly a possibility, given the events of the later songs on the album. This could simply be about the self-imposed death of a memory, something which the next song explores. Track 2 is Pictures of You, sparkling brighter than snow. This epic song sounds as dreamy as Plain Song, but its lyrics are of a more delicate nature. The first true tearjerker on the album, Pictures of You is delivered with piercing precision by Robert Smith. One can feel the pain in his voice, each line spoken from a hurting heart, a longing for a lost love whose pictures are all he has left to remember them by. The breaking apart of those pictures of you is a metaphor for his broken heart. That he feels the need to break them at all signifies a disappointment either with his lost love or himself. The song is indeed ambiguous, but the core message is one of courage. The courage to let go of a love that will never be again. Track 3 is Close Down. Driven by an interesting tribal-like percussive rhythm and awash with sweeping keyboard themes, Close Down feels shorter than it actually is, largely because the lyrics are few and they don't even begin until beyond the 2-minute mark of this 4-minute song. Close Down holds a very special place in my heart because it was the song on which I came to the realization that Disintegration was the greatest album ever made. A premature conclusion, you may think, but it was an instinction I had upon my first listen, an instinction which actually proved true. That is not because Close Down was anywhere near the best song on the album. I'd put it more down to the strength of the first 2 tracks and the seamless flow at which they progressed, and by the time Close Down swept me off my feet, it was 3 times in a row. Track 4 is Love Song. Led by an infectious bass line, Love Song sounds more like a lost track from The Cure's 1987 album, Kiss Me, Kiss Me, Kiss Me, than something which belonged on the dark and dreary Disintegration. The exotic motif on the melodies and the tenderness of the lyrics would have sounded right at home among Kiss Me, Kiss Me, Kiss Me tracks such as Catch, If Only Tonight We Could Sleep, Perfect Girl, and One More Time. The energetic guitar riff is complemented by a soothing organ theme, and Robert Smith never gets over-emotional on his vocal deliveries. The song was in fact a wedding gift to his new bride, Mary, and you can genuinely feel the sincerity in his words as he delivers them. Track 5, at least on the CD version of the album, is Last Dance. This song rides a floaty synth arrangement, plunging the listener into the aching heart of the narrator. This is a breakup song which touches upon themes common throughout Disintegration. Themes of nostalgia, aging, yearning, and despair are present on this cold countdown of a heart beating to the point of its breaking, an excellent addition to an already incredible album. Track 6 is Lullaby. This song will always have an extra special place in my heart since it was the first song that cured me. Lullaby sounded nothing like anything being released at the time, and nothing quite like Lullaby has ever been recorded since, not by The Cure, or any other artist for that matter. An unusual song that defies categorization, yet sounds so familiar even to new listeners. Lullaby traces its lineage all the way back to 1979 in The Cure's debut album, whether that be Boys Don't Cry if you live in the USA, or Three Imaginary Boys if you live in the rest of the world. Just listen to songs such as 10:15 Saturday Night or Subway Song, and you can hear the type of song Robert Smith was writing when he wrote Lullaby. Musically, they are worlds apart, of course, but it is an interesting link to discover nonetheless. And as for Lullaby not fitting on the album, I beg to differ. To me, the song is akin to a dream sequence in a film, a brief interlude which is neither part of the first or second act of the whole. That second act begins with the next track, and it is on the surface of Fascination Street, which we wake back up on. Track 7 is Fascination Street. The lead single from the album finds The Cure at their most psychedelic since 1984's The Top, yet the composition of the song is more in line with 1985's The Head on the Door. Whether it be the radio, the dance floor, or the stadium, Fascination Street sounds right at home no matter where you play it. The combination of swirling synth, rocksteady drum beats, layered bass playing, and lush guitar effects make the song an instant pleasure. You will want to move to the beat and hit opening time down on Fascination Street just like the lyrics go, and the meaning of those lyrics seem to be of a more sexual nature than it initially implies. The search for satisfaction leads to one's surrender to the available sins on the street the song is set on, and that street will be Bourbon Street in New Orleans, Louisiana, and the sound of the song beautifully captures the smoky, sensual atmosphere of a starlit sky underneath the city itself. Track 8 is Prayers for Rain, the first of two epic songs which together tell the story of a doomed relationship. Prayers for Rain to me suggests that the narrator is looking for a way to escape because he has either fallen out of love but cannot find the strength to walk away, or he cannot see a future no matter how much he loves his partner. A prayer for rain to me is an inner cry for help as I interpret it. That courage which is deep within a soul, but which only can be reached through introspection. With that said, Prayers for Rain is perhaps the most introspective song on Disintegration. And that introspection continues on track 9, The Same Deep Water as You, arguably the most atmospheric song on the album, maybe even The Cure's entire career. The Same Deep Water as You is a fairly relaxed but no less raging storm of melodic melancholy. Another song about letting go, but its placement on the album seems to reinforce my theory that the songs, though perfectly positioned musically, are out of sequence lyrically. The events on The Same Deep Water as You, I feel, lead to those discussed on earlier track, Pictures of You. Both songs deal with breakups and both are ambiguous as to how those breakups came about. It may well be simply walking away, but such brooding intensity suggests that perhaps death is the cause, an intended suicide or gradual self-destruction in this case, and that has often been the interpretation of The Same Deep Water as You, a subjective song in which we are asked to identify with the narrator who can see his love slip away before his eyes. I think the song asks us what we would do in his shoes, walk away with memories, or stay for the inevitable death which would scar our hearts forever. Either way, there is no hope in this one, and how fitting that such a tearjerker takes place beneath the bursting clouds. Track 10 is Disintegration. The sprawling, bittersweet, and thrilling title track is my favorite song from the album, a devastating near 10-minute lyrical rampage which rides one of the most intense yet infectious soundscapes ever created. A symphonic and stomping marriage of lunging guitars and layer upon layer of electronica. The tireless vocals of Robert Smith drip with seething conviction as he tears into each line. And another in a long line of breakup songs, perhaps the greatest that Robert Smith, or anyone else for that matter, has ever written. On the CD version of the album, track 11 is Homesick. It is a slower, more progressive piece than the earlier CD exclusive, Last Dance. The song almost predicts the direction the band would embark upon with their follow-up album, Wish, in 1992. In fact, this song could have easily fit anywhere on Wish, among such tracks as Apart, From the Edge of the Deep Green Sea, Trust, and To Wish Impossible Things. Ironically, Homesick was originally a Lawrence Tolhurst composition, and as we know, he was gone from the band shortly after the masterpiece that is, Disintegration, was released. The 12th and final track on the album is Untitled. Robert Smith ends The Cure's bleak and beautiful magnum opus in self-explanatory fashion with this hopelessly adrift coda, a final comment by the narrator on the emotions each of the songs inspired, and how he longs to experience those lost moments again, to wish impossible things, one could say. Disintegration was the second installment of what simply became known as The Cure's Trilogy, an 18-year journey beginning with 1982's Pornography, continuing with 1989's Disintegration, and climaxing with 2000's Bloodflowers. This official series has sometimes been referred to by the music press as the Dark Trilogy. I personally prefer to refer to it as the Perfect Trilogy, as like Robert Smith himself, I feel that each of the three albums are the very best representation of The Cure. Each album marked the end of an era, and each set the standard for every other Cure album which followed in their wake. The Cure's earlier trilogy of 1980's 17 Seconds, 1981's Faith, and 1982's Pornography is better fitting of the Dark Trilogy label, in my opinion. It began a lineage of darkness which The Cure would resume several years later on Disintegration, and supposedly lay to rest on Bloodflowers. And I say supposedly because at this moment in time, The Cure are on the verge of releasing what is said to be their darkest album in a very long time. Relentless doom and gloom, as Robert Smith himself has described it, Songs of a Lost World is due for release in just over a month's time, and it's safe to say that I am one of millions who is extremely fucking excited about it. I used to like to refer to the 1980 to 2000 quintet of 17 Seconds, Faith, Pornography, Disintegration, and Bloodflowers as The Cure's Pentalogy, the 5 darkest and most perfect albums of the band's career. But with a new dark album on the horizon, I may have to change that Pentalogy to a Hexalogy. But going back to the Pentalogy as it currently stands, for me, 1980's 17 Seconds beautifully captured not only the progression from day to night, but also other polar opposites including light to darkness and focus to confused. Musically, the album has more and more of an experimental feel as it progresses, which perfectly mirrors the lyrical portrait of calm, spiraling into disorientation. It is only natural that its 1981 follow-up, Faith, was an introspective affair. The only place one can go when lost is inside themselves, and that is exactly what Faith depicted, an exploration of the human psyche, albeit one on the verge of a breakdown. Faith sounds exactly as one would expect, a gradual collapse of the human condition set against the backdrop of deeply melancholic music. An ever-increasing sense of hopelessness envelops each successive track until the inevitably bleak climax. Such loss of hope gives way to the self-destruction heard, and indeed felt, throughout its 1982 follow-up, Pornography, an album which took the listener to the uncharted corners of the human psyche, topping even its predecessor Faith in its outright bleakness. If 17 Seconds was a semi-experimental step into the shadows, then Faith and Pornography were as consumed by the darkness as they were crafted to musical perfection. However, whereas Faith offered the listener a dance on the dark side of reality, Pornography was a total self-destruction. All three albums together tell the story of an innocence lost, the naivety of youth, the disappointment which breeds despair, and the distractions one allows themselves in order to escape the boredom of living. The inevitable guilt and emptiness one feels for giving in to such debauchery only feeds their own inner hate, a sickness for which there is seemingly only one cure. And it is Disintegration which picks up where the Dark Trilogy left off, an album which for me is as much about survival as it is suffering, the single theme of hope at the heart of a no less harsh album. Disintegration deals with everything from death to heartbreak to fear, and despite the emotional grief, unbearable pain and mental torture they inflict upon the narrator, he survives. Something he had no intention of doing at the devastating climax of Pornography. And it is Disintegration which offers the first glimpse of hope after the relentless hopelessness of the first three installments. Hope which is further grasped on Bloodflowers, but not at the cost of the brooding darkness which remains constant throughout the Pentalogy. Each of the 5 albums feels like a singular entity that is split into several pieces. And it does seem like the final piece is on its way in the form of Songs of a Lost World. The end songs are coming.